And we begin tonight with the new Congress, the 118th. Today was supposed to be swearing-in day, typically a big day for the country, filled with pomp and pageantry and often a feeling of hope and excitement as a new Congress kicks off and implements its vision. For some, it serves as Bring Your Kids to Congress Day, so that children get to see their parents or their grandparents take the oath and perhaps make history themselves. History was certainly made on this opening day in the House of Representatives when House Democrats nominated their caucus chair, Hakeem Jeffries of New York, to succeed Nancy Pelosi as Speaker.
I rise today at the direction of the House Democratic Caucus to place into nomination for election to the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives the pride of Brooklyn, Hakeem Jeffries of New York.
The New York congressman secured 212 votes for Speaker. It was the first time since 2007 that a Democratic leader won support from every single member of their caucus. Jeffries is also now officially the first black lawmaker to lead a party in Congress, succeeding the first woman, Pelosi. It was a picture of unity within the Democratic Party and of progress, a changing of the guard in House Democratic leadership, even more diverse, younger, reflecting the promise of America. But the start of a new congressional year can also be messy, very messy. And by messy, we're talking a full-on revolt against Kevin McCarthy and his fight for the speakership. To win the gavel, McCarthy needs a majority of the members-elect who are present and voting. That would be 218 votes if everyone is present. And, well, things aren't exactly going McCarthy's way. Earlier today, Kevin failed to win a majority on the first ballot amid opposition from his party's far-right fringe. The same scenario repeated during the second vote, with the anti-McCarthy faction consolidating for insurrection-friendly Tea Partier Jim Jordan of Ohio, who himself is a supporter of McCarthy. Kevin then lost his third vote for Speaker, even losing support when Florida Republican Byron Donalds, who earlier got a nomination vote himself, announced his support for Jordan after having voted twice for McCarthy. It's the first time in 100 years that a Speaker was not elected on the first ballot. And what happens next is literally anyone's guess. The House has adjourned until noon tomorrow, so just grab that popcorn, America. This just might take a while. Joining me now is MSNBC Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. All I want to know, Ali, well, two things I want to know. On the Democratic side, how loudly were they laughing, and at any point did they start to break out ticker tape and have a parade? And on the other side, what are the conversations taking place now that they've adjourned between McCarthy and the 20 who oppose him?
So, look, I didn't see ticker tape from Democrats, but I did see popcorn. You're not far off with that. And then on the other side of it, Republicans are now eating pizza. Like, literally, on my way to do this live shot with you, there were boxes and boxes of pizza being wheeled in because they have a long night ahead of them. McCarthy is still huddling with these conservative lawmakers, trying to find a way to make inroads. But here's the problem. They didn't just meet the other day. They have been talking about this for weeks. McCarthy has been making concessions, trying to find ways to get these Freedom Caucus members on board, and it's clear that they have an all-or-nothing approach here. That much was clear this morning when they were talking with reporters, and it has certainly sustained itself throughout the day. The McCarthy strategy was also to keep people on the floor and just eventually wear them out, be able to make inroads by the sheer force of putting people on the floor. Those conservative lawmakers, though, didn't blink. The reality is true that they are both nominating the guy, Jim Jordan, who is nominating Kevin McCarthy. The guy does not want to be Speaker, but at the same time, conservatives are still trying to find any way to keep McCarthy from being in this position. And so far, they're being able to do so. McCarthy is not Speaker, and there's no clear way for him to get there. And so there's a lot of shrugging here on Capitol Hill right now, because frankly, this just needs to play out. But no one can say the way it's going to end because it's not clear who's willing to blink first.
MSNBC Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale, thank you. Tell them they better stay away from the pizza boxes. The QAnon people get real suspicious when they see pizza. They think something funny is going on. So thank you, Ali. Appreciate you. Joining me now is Sir Michael Singleton, former Republican political consultant and host of Screen Share on Peacock, Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist, and Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large at The Bulwark and an MSNBC contributor. I'm going to start at the table here because, Kurt, you know, you were staff at one time to Republicans, and And I love the fact that both of you here, because you were both young Republicans and that were idealistic, I'm sure, coming into the party, and then discovered what the party was. And started to back away. You wrote a piece in the LA Times, Kurt, about when things started to get weird. And it was 2014 in the Obama era. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when you look at what's unfolded today, Joy, to me, all of this started 8 years ago when Dave Brat defeated the sitting House Majority Leader Eric Cantor in his primary. It was the first time, really, that we saw from that Tea Party wing of the party that had emerged, them successfully take out what they called the establishment, which they really thought of as the enemy. It's funny because that wing of the party, the Democrats were the opposition, but their own leadership, their own party structure, they saw them as the enemy, and they successfully took out Eric Cantor. And Cantor was part of this trifecta that was anointed as the Young Guns. It was Paul Ryan, Eric Cantor, and you guessed it, Kevin McCarthy. They were going to be the heir apparents that were going to take over. Cantor goes down. Boehner then, a year later, resigns from Congress, not just vacating the speaker. He left. He took his ball and went home. McCarthy was supposed to be the leader at that point. The night before the vote's going to happen, the Freedom Caucus puts out 30 to 40 members saying they're not going to vote for McCarthy. 24 hours later, McCarthy bows out of the race. Paul Ryan ascends. Guess what happened shortly after that? Paul Ryan leaves Congress. He didn't want to deal with it anymore because it got too crazy. Here we are now, all those years later, and it's the same play playing out.
Yeah.
A vocal minority of extreme, and in this case, anti-democratic domestic terrorist sympathizers have hijacked the entire caucus. There are 222 Republicans in Congress. How is it possible that these people have allowed 20 of them, led by Matt Gaetz, who sent Venmos to a child trafficker of some kind? Like, how do they allow this to happen? That they get held hostage? And it's because for every time that this has happened, they capitulate. That's been the Republican response. The reason why Donald Trump was able to hijack the Republican Party was because they surrendered it to him. Trump didn't take it by force. He just won it through attrition. They just gave up. Now they're seeing what happens when you let that happen. There's a reason why, Joy. The United States motto is we don't negotiate with terrorists. This is the reason why. Well,
I mean, and look, Sharmichael, the thing is, and I've always said that the media made a huge mistake underestimating what the Tea Party was. This was an extreme anti-Obama surge of anxiety about people who look like this table growing in numbers in the country, and they freaked out. But they then organized and took over the Republican Party. Much of the House caucus, the Freedom Caucus, that's the Tea Party.
Tea Party.
Jim Jordan, Tea Party, or even DeSantis in Florida, Tea Party. The Tea Party has now become the baseline.
Oh, they have.
Then on top of that, you have the MAGA people. Then on top of that, you have people like Gosar, whose own family says are extreme racists. And then the moderates, what passes for them are the guy who called himself David Duke without the baggage. Scalise. So your range is now extreme to a little less extreme, and there's very little left of the kind of people who probably compelled you to become a Republican.
I mean, look, this is what happens when you allow extremism to hijack and take over a political party. The Republican Party in its current rendition is an ungovernable party. It cannot govern. I remember in 2014 when Brat beat Eric Cantor, I was an opposition researcher tasked with all the Apple research for all Republican candidates running in the state of Virginia. Cantor was rarely ever in his district. And when Brat won, I remember the conversations at the time strategically were, well, if we allow some of the Tea Party individuals to win and we support them and we back them, we can control them, we can reel them in, but temporarily it will give us a majority. And it did. It was the greatest majority in 90 years. The party was incredibly successful. Fast forward after that, you get to Trump. And that, to me, was sort of the catalyst where I think the Republican Party really had to make a decision. Do we completely oppose him with everything we can to try to save the party? Or do we allow this guy to become the nominee and ultimately win? Well, they chose for Trump to become the president. And at this point, Joy, I don't see how it's even possible for the Republican Party to reverse this. Kurt, to your point of you don't negotiate with terrorists, it's too late for that, Joy. The terrorists have won. They've started beheading people. They have now regained control of the Republican Party. And to the point that you made and asked about those moderates, the idea of moderation in the Republican Party is a non-existent term. The idea of bipartisanship is a non-existent term. Many folks that I knew, many folks you knew who were moderate-leaning Republicans have either become Democrats like Kurt or independents like myself. And so I think one has to ask the question, Joy, at that point, if you are a conservative in this country, what is your obligation when the current iteration of your party stands for everything that is, for the most part, anti-democracy?